Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Today, I present the 11th episode of my Let the Women Tell It series. This one will have some men talking as well, but for the most part, I'm going to get the woman's point of view. This one is pretty much about how men will waste your time in years if you let us. Especially if he gives you the hint that he wants to marry you, but he keeps dragging it on, and the years pass, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. Listen, ladies, in your biological life, you don't have 5 years to waste on anybody, man or woman or child. You know, those years are precious. And I'm not talking about you fooling around, but if a man's intentional, it doesn't take him that long to ask you to marry him. I'm just telling you, it's a public service announcement from one man breaking the code and letting you know that if a guy is stringing you along, excuse me, for years, he's looking at the exit door. He might not say that. He might even seem like he's in love with you. But if he wants to keep you, he will not hesitate to ask you to marry him. So what I want you to do is like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Share this content with other women, the 2 or 3 of you who might be in my subscriber base. Kind of expand that, because this one I think is important, and you'll hear some women talking about it too. I'm going to share that video with you in a second. Okay, here we go.
Talk about it. Babe, is 2 years long enough to know you're ready to marry someone?
2 years. Okay, every situation is different, but generally speaking, I believe that if you've been dating someone consistently for 2 years and you're still not there with them, either that's not your person or you're just not ready to get married at that point.
I think 2 years is long enough to know. I believe that you can believe you're ready to get married almost right away, but it's going to take around that time to cultivate the relationship so that you can know that that's the person that you want to marry. But let's ask our kids and see what they think.
You should know if you're ready to marry somebody by 2 years, because if the goal is marriage, then that person should align with everything that you want, and you should be working towards that goal. There's so many different dynamics that you want to see from your partner. And it doesn't mean you have to get married right away, but I think you definitely should know if that's the person you want to marry.
Honestly, I'm gonna speak from a man's standpoint. I think men know within like the first few months, but it doesn't mean you have to act on it. I think there's a lot of life to live and a lot of connection to be built between the two partners. But I think 2 years is, you should know by then.
2 years is more than enough time to know if you want a future with that person, because you've already spent 2 years with them. And if they weren't the person, you wouldn't be with them. But I think there's a difference between knowing and doing, being able to lead the relationship and state your intent.
Listen, what do you think about what they have to say? I think they made a lot of good sense. Honestly, if a man wants to marry you, 2 years is more than enough time for them to know if that's what they want to do. Especially if you've been around each other. He's been able to see this woman in, many different capacities. He knows things about her. He sees her. He's intrigued by her. He likes her. It doesn't take 2 years for a man to know if he wants to marry a woman. So when I see a lot of relationships where women have been engaged for 5 and 10 years in a relationship with a man, and even some of them had kids for the man, listen, either this man he doesn't really want to marry you, or either he's afraid, or, he just doesn't want to do it. He just doesn't want to get married at all. And there are a lot of men who string women along, with the promise of marrying them, knowing good and well that they're not really ready for marriage. It's not something that they actually really want to do. And I think, if you're the woman in this scenario, then you have to make your intentions known. You have to let them know that, hey, I'm interested in marriage and I'm not going to play house with you for years and years and years, because the longer you do that, the harder it is to walk away from a relationship. Because when you've established a home together, y'all have had kids, y'all have done everything that a married couple would normally do, but you still don't have that ring, and you've been with that person 5 or more years. I mean, if you allow that to happen, it could easily happen. There are a lot of women who are in relationships with men and they have children with them, but they don't have the ring. But the man proposed. They've been engaged for 10 years, but they've never been married. Then that is a red flag to me. That means he just really doesn't want to get married, but he knows that's something that you want to do. And he's comfortable in a relationship. He's comfortable with what he's getting from you. You're giving him everything. You've given him a child or children. Y'all have cohabitated together. You've built a life together. You have everything else that would make it seem like you're a married couple, but except for the actual marriage. And so I think a lot of women get frustrated by that, and they hang in there because they've built their life with this person, but the man never really marries them. So these long proposals, I don't believe in that. I don't think that that should happen. If a man wants to marry you and he knows that you want to be married, then if he wants to do it, he's going to do it. And it would not take him 2 years or longer.
Let me stop you right there, okay? Because she's absolutely right. And that's the point. Especially if you have children. You're in a bind now because women inherently know, even though they try to argue this, you inherently know that if you have children from a man and he leaves you with those kids, even if he's paying child support, your sexual marketplace value is almost nil for the men that you might want. The guys, you go back out on the dating market, people have these unrealistic expectations of you. They'll think you're easy, they'll think you're fast, and all they're going to want to do is smash you because they ain't going to want you, your kids, and your ex. They're not going to, most guys who are worth their grain of salt don't want that. Stepdaddy season's dead. You'll always find some dude who'll do it, but he'll probably have a brood of kids from several different baby mamas himself, and you're gonna have to put up with that. But that young, that 35-year-old buck who's on his grind with no kids, looking for a wife, he ain't looking for a woman with kids and an ex hanging out as his first choice. You could bet your bottom dollar on that one. So don't let a guy that you're with string you along, and heaven forbid you have kids out of wedlock and he still ain't marrying you. And then he leaves because y'all break up for whatever reason. You are going to come up as a woman on the short end of that stick. You could bet your bottom dollar. It doesn't matter how many women in these spaces try to up you and all that other bullshit they talk about. You're going to have these kids. They're going to be with you. He's going to be paying you whatever little child support he can afford. And your dating life is going to be an absolute nightmare. You know what I'm saying? So either this guy wants to marry you, and please marry before you carry. RP, marriage, politics, and sports. Over and out.